Okay, now today we are going to look onto another thing that is called loops in JavaScript, on how we are going to work with loops. Okay, somebody will be asking you what is the use of loops, or loops are used for what. So the first thing in programming, we use different loops to carry out repetitive tasks. These are tasks that are needed to be repeated uh, every time you have to carry out that task. So that is where loops come in. So therefore, loops can help us to automate any tedious and repetitive task. And in JavaScript, we have different types of loops. Okay, now which we can use to work with repeated task. So, for example, imagine if you are asking to print a hello world, any hello world. So 1,000 times without loop, it may take a lot of hours, or 2 to 3 tedious tasks. Using loops, you can just print it in less than a second if you want to use the loops. So the types of loops that we have the for loop, we have the while loop, we have the do while loops, we have the for of, we have for each loop, and then we have the last one, which is for in. But mostly people use the while loop for, and do while for each also, yeah, mostly. Okay, a loop. This is I'm explaining on how loops work. So a loop usually goes until the condition gets false. So our loops will continue to loop until the place that it goes to false. As onto our first time, we have learned something called true or false, a boolean. So that is now, this is one condition where a boolean can be applied. So this loop will be repeated at different times until that condition of that loop becomes false. That is where now the loop will stop. Okay. So, but sometimes we will like to interrupt the loop or skip an item during iteration. So if we want to do something like that, like interrupting or skipping an item on that loop, then we have another thing that we call it break. You see, now we use break to interrupt. That is where a break comes in. So we use break to interrupt the loop and continue to skip the item duration iteration. That is the use of break. So today, that is what we are going to learn about the loops. So let's start with our first loop. So the first loop, we said that we have different kinds of loops. So we are going to start with this, the for loop. So let's say this is for the for loop, the for loop. So the for loop, this is the, uh, let me give you, for example, on how we use a for loop. So we use for loop when we know how many iterations we go. If we know the number of iterations that we want to go, that is the place where we use for loops. Maybe let's say we have to make 5 iterations. That is a condition where we know the exact number of iterations that we want to use. See, that is the difference now. For so for loop is used when we know the number of iteration we want to use. For example, um, let's say, okay, let me start by giving you the syntax of for loop. So syntax of the syntax of for loops for loop is as shown. Let me give it to you. So a for loop started by doing like something like for, okay, the for, then inside that one we initialization. This is where we initialize the value, where we see the starting point. That is called initialization. So initialization, so that is the starting point. Okay, so the initialization, that is the first thing we have to do, and then we give a condition after initializing. What next? We have to give a condition of that initialization. Which condition are we going to give? This is the condition now. Okay, and then after the condition, what else are we going to do? Are we going to increment or decrementing that the initialization, the values? So this is the second thing. So increment. So are we going to increment or um, decrement? Decrement. Okay. So these are the things that you have to know about if you want to do something about a loop. Okay. Then after that, now your body of looping, or we can say uh, your codes goes here. After looping, what do you want to do? This is what you have to do now. That is where the goes comes in. Okay, so this is the syntax. So let's just yeah, do something like that. We are commenting it because we don't want errors if we want to run this thing. Okay, so this is the condition. The first thing, it is a for. This for, it is a this for we have to pass in some parameters. Parameters are the values that are taken in by the function. So the parameters to be used are the initializations, and then the condition, and then we have the increment and the decrement. These are the parameters that are to be used here. So there's difference between parameter and something called arguments. These are two arguments. See, these are two things. You can learn about arguments later, but for now, let's know that a parameter, it is the value that is passed in inside the function. So for now, we have a function for which has these parameters here. Okay, that is first thing that you have to learn. And then after that, what else are we going to do? It is the body part. After the iteration or after the loop, what do you want to do? This is what you're going to do. Now, let's give an example of on how we are going to use this thing. Okay, the first example that we are going to use is that example. Okay, okay, example. Yeah, let's say example. Okay, the first example that we're going to use is I want to create a loop and console that loop there. Okay, I want to create a loop. Okay, let's say create. Okay, let's start with the command. Comment, please. Comment creating a loop to print, because this is what we want to do. For us to test this thing, we have to print the value. So we have to print creating a loop to print values starting from values from 0 to 5. So this is what I want to do. I want to create a loop that will be printing this value 0 to 5. So this is an iteration. If you see something like this, that you want to print some values in a range, a range of values, so that it is a loop that you are supposed to create. So the first thing that we're going to do, we are going to create this function. Okay, we are going to create this function. Creating this function, we have first of all to create the function and pass in the initial value. So because we are going to start from 0, then 0 will be our initialization point. So it will be our initial value. So that's why we said let. So this is the first thing that we have to do. Let. This is the initial value, which we said earlier that the syntax, it has an initialization. So this initialization is this one. We are initializing. What do we want to do? We want to print a value from 0 to 5. So meaning the initial value is 0. So this is the value we are initializing it. Then our second thing that we want to do is to create a condition now. Which value? It is to 5. Okay. So how are we going to do this? Meaning our values must start from 0 to 5. So they are supposed not to be like beyond 5, like let's say 6. So specific, it is to 5. So how are we going to do this? We are going to put the condition now. Okay, we are going to insert the condition inside. So the condition will be the initialized value I. We have already so here the initial value is that we have created an variable I, a variable I, which stores the value of 0. So this variable I, it is our initialization. So it is our initial value, which our initial value now it is 0. So this I has been, okay, this 0 has been stored in our I variable. Okay, that is 1. So this is a variable. All of this I, it is a variable. Okay, now this I variable stores value 0. So we have create a condition that will make the values to be from 0 to 5, not beyond 5 or less than 0, like something like negative 1. Yeah, so must have from 0 to 5. That is where a condition comes. For us to meet these values here, we have to create this condition inside here. So this value that I have created here, which is started from 0, must, it is supposed to be to 5, up to 5, not beyond 5. So we can add this that condition and say I is supposed to be less. So it is supposed to be something like less. Okay, it has to be I must be less. So because we already have our I value here, so I have to be less than 6. Okay, now, okay, good. Then uh, and then after that, what are we going to do? How are we going to calculate, add this number until the we meet this condition, until we meet this condition? Okay, how are we going to do that? That is where incrementation and decrementation comes in. So we have to increment this data, so we can increment our I. Now our I it is 0. Now I want I to be 1. What I'm going to do, I need I to be 2. I need I to be 3 until our I it is 5. Then if our I it is 5, make sure that our I will not be beyond 5. This is how the condition works. And then the incrementation part is where now we increase the value of I. So that is now I comes in, then plus plus, that is implementation. So we increase the value of I as we run this code. Yeah, that is how for loops work. Let's run and see. As you can see, our for loops is here. Okay, so let's log in. I want to log something here. This is, let's say I want to say this is okay. This is a for loop. Okay, for loop. Okay. So after that, yeah, okay, comma. Yeah, we learned about this thing earlier at our first tutorials, where when we want to call or to print an output of a variable, that is what we do. See, so I have the I here and I printed the value. So I don't want to print the I directly. At least I want to tell the the user that this is a for loop, so that you'll understand more. Like this one is directly, a person will come and look at it and say, hey, what is this? I can say 0, 1, 2, 3. So I want to tell the user that this is a for loop. So what can I do? That is what I can. So after that, print that and so enter. After that, you can see this is a for loop. Yeah, that's it. So this is how this thing works. For let I to be 0 and I. So this is the looping. This one, this part, it is the part that does the looping. The looping, I mean. Okay, that is where the looping is performed. That is where the condition has to be satisfied. So here you have to understand that if this condition is true, if this condition is true, okay, if not all of it, but this one here, if the value of I is less than 6, then console or print this one, do this code. That is how this syntax is telling us that if this condition is true, then execute the codes inside. Yeah, that is how it works. That is the reason why if I delete this one and say I want to just print that this is for loop, let's print that one first and see. Okay, as you can see something like this. This is for loop, this is for loop until, if you count them, 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, okay, because it is 6. So if this value is 6, now that is how it comes in. Where if the value is, if our I is less than 6, then do this. So this loop will only stop if this condition is false. So if the loop is at the 7th time, then this thing is not going to be printed out. The execution is going to be stopped. That is the end of the execution, because the value of I now is being iterated. It has been incremented to a point that it reached 7. So the execution will be stopped. That is now how these things work. Okay, yeah. This is how the for loop works. Now another thing is I want to create another one. Okay, I want to create another one. Example, example. I want to sum up. I want to sum all numbers between 0 to 100. So here the condition to be met is that we want to sum up this data here, these numbers 0 to 100, all this one 0 plus 1 plus 2 until it reached 100. So I want to sum up this data 0 up to 100. How I'm going to do this? So first thing, you have given a condition here, that the condition is the number that we're supposed to add are from 0 to 100. That is condition. So the next thing I'm going to do is that we are going to sum. So this thing works differently, but the thing that we're going to do, we are going to create this condition so that you will be adding this number. So we add 0 1, then iterate, go to 2, add that 2, then iterate, go to 3, add that 2. That is where this condition will come, and then this condition will be counting, will be making sure that the numbers start from, they are not beyond 100, this condition. And this one will make sure that the initial value start from 0. Okay, and then we add those numbers. Good. Now let's work on this. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do, we have to add these numbers. How are we going to do this? Let's leave apart the part of looping. The first thing that we have to do, we have to initialize the sum. First, before we add anything, our sum will be at 0. The number to be added will be 0. So we have 0 numbers that are added. So we have sum 0. Okay, that is before we add anything. So the first thing that we have to do, it is to define a variable, okay, that will be holding the value 0. Okay, so this will be telling the program that, okay, now we have the sum, so the sum or variable that has stored 0. So we have 0 sums for now. Okay, so now let's continue. Okay, we have 0 sums. So the next thing is, let's go inside the function. So the first one, it is to define an integer that will store. Okay, this one, the work of this one, it is to iterate through the numbers here. Iterate through the numbers. These numbers 0 to 100, not the sums. Okay, the work of this one is to iterate through the numbers until 100 to make sure that this condition is met. We use this one. Yeah. Okay, so first we initialize the value 0. If here I say that maybe add the numbers between 0 to maybe 1 to 100, 1 to 100, then we can change this, the value of I, to 1. We can change this one to 1 because that is our initial point. So always this is our initial point, but we want from 0 to 100. So yeah, that's it. So now the condition is we want the values to be not beyond 100. So this is where this condition comes: y less than 101. This value of I must be less than 101. This one will make sure that the iterated values will not go beyond 100. This condition here, the iterated value will not go beyond 100. And this one, it will make sure that it will increment the numbers. It will increment the work of I++. It is to increment these numbers: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There, that is incrementation. So this is the work of the I. Okay, so it is incrementing this value here, the I that is initialized at 0. After running to be successful, okay, after it runs, it will store this I value as 1. That is the first iteration. The second iteration, it will store the I as 2. And then the second iteration, it incremented the value from 2 to 3. Then it stores the data as 4 again. After storing it as 4, the fifth iteration, increment the data by 1, then store that value as 5. So that's how it works until the value of I become greater than 101. When it means it become greater than 101, that is where now this loop will stop to be executed. Okay, so that's how it works. Now let's look on this. Now if an alteration has occurred, the alteration will move. If that alteration it is true, let's say the value is 1. Okay, let's start with 0. We can say it is 0. Then let's look at this condition. The value 0 is less than 100. Okay, that is true, meaning iterated it by 1, so it is increased by 1. If iteration occurs, then this code is executed. This code, if this condition is true, then this code is executed. This is what it does. The first thing, it creates a sum, a variable sum, okay, and then the sum. Now this sum here, it is this one that we have defined here that has 0. So we take that 0 plus that value that has been iterated here. The first value it is 0, so take that 0. Then iterate increase by 1, that is 1. So take the sum is equal to sum plus 1 plus the I, which is the iterated value, which is supposed to be 1, add it, then our new value here for the sum becomes 2, not 2, because we have sum is 0 here, so it is 0, then 0, then yeah, plus 1, that is 1. This process continues until the value I becomes less than 100. That is where we will get our final sum. value. So that's how this thing will work. Okay, that's how this thing works. Okay, let's try and run this thing and see this code and see. Yeah. Okay, we are getting some error. Okay, we have some error saying user oops.js console.log. This is for. Okay, we are having some error here. I think it's because I changed this one. Okay, let's run again. Yeah, it is telling me that there's something that is missing here. We have after argument, the missing after argument list. So the argument list is this one. So so you have to add that comma inside there. Let's run again and see. Okay, now it's supposed to run successful. As you can see, yeah, so loops, this is for, okay, let's delete this one because I only want one thing. Okay, we have already summed, so there's no error, but now we have to output that value. Okay, for now there's no code that is telling us to output that value. We just calculated the sum and nothing's being outputted. How are we going to output that? We have to console the value. So console, as you all know, it is console, then enter that the log part, then enter, then the sum. Now here we output the variable sum because that is what we want. We want this sum, so this sum is what we want. Let's run and see. Okay, we can see that we have 5050. That is the sum of all numbers starting from 0 to 100, and that's how now this thing works. Okay, let's go to another example that we want to do is about I want to add I want to add or sum, and you can do or sum only even numbers. So this, I want the even numbers. I want to sum only the even numbers. Okay, this is different. The same case from 0 to 100. But now not all of them, but I just want to sum the even numbers. That is the difference with that. This one I was adding everything, even numbers and the odd. Yeah, but this one I want to just sum the even numbers. How am I going to do this thing? Okay, first you have to define, as usual, we have to create a variable with the sum 0, and then we have to loop inside that numbers to make sure that we add, so this thing will repeat itself as, okay, and then but now this thing here, it will repeat itself, but we have to add another thing here to make sure that we add only the even number. We have to make sure the even number are the one that are being added. So the only thing that we're going to change is this condition, this one. But the condition will remain the same because we need the number from 0 to 100, and then we're starting from 0. So this will remain the same. But this one, the increment and decrement part is supposed to change. Okay. Let's copy this one here because it is the same. Now we can do it in two ways. So let's start with this one. So for this, okay, let's just remove this one because, okay, for this one, what we want to do is the sum is equal to 0. We have already declared, and then let I is equal to 0. Then this is the part that I want us to change. Okay, the I we are going to increment, but this I will be only incremented if that value is divisible by 2. You see, if it is divisible by 2, but because we know all of the even number are divisible by 2, if you put this condition here inside, then this code is going to work. Okay, yeah. So this code is going to work. Let's run. Okay. Okay, so our next thing that we're going to do, we are going to use another formula. So the first thing, let's declare something called total as the variable name and give it a value of 0. Okay. Now after declaring the total, let's say now let's start our looping. So for, we use for because we are using for. Then for, this is it. So the index, which now I want to say for the value of I, which is equal to 0, and then okay, leave this part confusing. Okay, the value of I is equal to 0, and then I want that I to be less than 100. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say I less than 100. Okay, and 1. That will make sure that our I is less than 100. Then we have to increment, but we're not going to increment. We increment the values of I. Okay, so this is it. So make sure that you increment until the value reaches 100. But now here we have to add another functionality. We are incrementing the value. That is okay. Now the next thing that we're going to do is to include something that is called the if statement, the if conditions. We can say if this value is divisible by 2, then do this thing. Okay, and if this number is not, then don't do this. Okay, so that is this where if conditions applies. So the condition is let, okay, not let, but we can say one, if one are divisible by this one, where's it, not that one. Okay, we have to make sure that this value returns a remaining of 0. We don't want a remaining like 0.2, 0.3, no. If we divide these values, we want to make sure that the remaining is 0. Okay, that is why we know that this thing is an even number. But if the remaining, it has something like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, it is a float, something like that, then it means that value is not an even number. So that is the condition. So 1, 2, this one should be equal to what? Should be equal to 0. If this is true, if this condition is true, 1% 2, if this condition is true, then you are supposed to do this thing here down. So the thing that we're going to start to do, it is take the total number, okay, store it there, and then take the total number now, the total that is stored in your array, then plus it by the value of I that we have retrieved from the condition, from the looping. Okay, so this is how this condition will work. So now after that, console the total. So console, we have to console log the total. Good. So this one now is going to make sure that the I condition, the values are from 100, and then if that value, the I value, I%2 equals, it is equal to 0, then do this thing. Yeah. No, this is not supposed to be I, it's supposed to be I. So if we take that value here, maybe the value is 1. Let's take, for example, the value is 1. So, okay, let's do it here. So the value is 1. If the value is 1 and we divide it, let's say it is 1 here, and then we divide it by this one, okay, we divide it by 2, you can see here we will be getting something like 0.5, you see. But now our condition is we want this value to be 1. For example, if we take 2%, 2%, 2, we want our value to be this one, it will give us something like this one's supposed to be 5, and this one 2% 2 is will give us something like 0, because if you take 2 divided by 2 you'll get 1.0. So we have nothing uh, like percent, like a remaining value. We don't have a remaining value. So this is how this condition works. F1, let's run it and see. Okay, that's it. So we have a total of 25, 50. Those are the values of even number. And then you can do this with the odd number. The odd number you divide by 2, we expect something here. So that is the odd number also. We'll be having the same result. So that is the end of this tutorials. And I think now the next one we will be looking at the while loop. The while loop, and see on how this while loop also works.